Hello friends, David Paulides here, with you on Mystery Rift. Tonight, we dive deep into the heart of the enigma that has haunted my research for years, the missing 411 phenomena. These are cases where victims disappear in specific clusters, often under bizarre, almost supernatural circumstances. We're not talking about simple accidents here. We're talking about disappearances that defy logic. What if the great North American wilderness isn't just a random backdrop for tragedy? What if something is operating out there, something that is actively taking people at an alarming rate? We must look at the evidence. We must look at every clue, no matter how small or strange it may seem. Let's look at the evidence. Here are the cases for you to consider. We often focus on hikers and campers. But even the professional park staff, the ones who know the land best, they are not immune. Consider the case of the National Park Service employee, Paul Fugate. Paul vanished from Chiricahua National Monument after leaving very clear instructions if he wasn't back by a certain time. Close up without him. This was a man preparing for a known exit. He walked out and down towards an area the park was acquiring. A 400-acre purchase mired in conflict with the local Apache tribe. Did that land hold secrets? Or did the conflict catch up to him? Paul was never seen or heard from again. No body was ever found. He simply ceased to exist on that contested parcel of ground. Next, we face the challenge of the impossible fall. The vanishing act from high altitude. Stephen Van Pelt was a devoted climber on Mount Jefferson. In 2021, his climbing partner watched Stephen slip and fall hundreds of feet down the rugged slope. When someone falls off a mountain, you should find them at the bottom. But Stephen seems to have fallen off the mountain and right off the face of the earth. Search teams, including the U.S. Army National Guard, scoured the deep cliffs and crevices. They searched the specific drainage where he was presumed to have landed. Yet, Stephen was never found. How can an experienced climber vanish after being seen falling from a specific spot? It's an impossible physical anomaly. Sometimes these disappearances are tied to places with a distinct, almost magnetic pull of the bizarre. In the Mojave Desert, near Area 51, we find Kenny Beach. Kenny was obsessed with finding cave systems. He spoke about finding one, the entrance shaped like a perfect capital M, where his whole body began to vibrate. He was terrified. He returned to the M cave, armed with a camera and a gun, hoping to conquer his fear. He never came home. His phone was found, but the trail went cold. Was it a military secret operating in the desert? Or was that vibration a warning from something older? Something subterranean that didn't want him to enter. The M Cave keeps its secrets. Another location that seems to consume the missing Devil's Hole in Death Valley. In 1965, two young men, Paul Contieri and David Rose, vanished while diving into this deep geothermal abyss. The local Timbisha Shoshone tribes believe this location holds powerful, malevolent energy. Speaking of spirits and giants that snatch victims, when the first diver vanished, the second went in after him, and both were swallowed by the deep. The bodies were never recovered from that mysterious fossil water portal. Professional divers described the cave as opening into a space that was like infinity. Charles Manson was later obsessed with this hole, convinced it was an underwater portal to the underworld. When a location carries such an ancient, dangerous reputation, we have to respect the anomalies. The vast majority of the missing are never found. But the stories from the few survivors are often the most difficult to believe. Yet they echo the very anomalies we investigate. Kevin Bear Henry survived an astonishing 74 days in the wildlands of Fairy Creek. British Columbia, Bear was immobilized. Unable to walk far, stuck in their van with only meager supplies. They heard search helicopters overhead. They screamed for help. But their cries went completely unheard. This is the close proximity failure that defines so many of these cases. Bear's survival is an incredible testament to human will. But it proves that the searchers and the searched can be just yards apart and yet remain separate. Possibly by something unseen. Now, consider the story of Linda Ortega, lost for 5 days in the Arkansas Ozarks. Linda was found, but what she experienced was deeply chilling. She claimed that while lost, she saw other people walking nearby or actively hiding behind the bushes. She tried to ask them for help, but not a single one would acknowledge her. They would look away or seemingly melt back into the shadows. Why would people who were clearly present in the woods refuse to acknowledge a lost, distressed woman? Linda's account supports the terrifying idea of non-societal inhabitants in our forests. Perhaps the ferals or wild men that rangers like Dwight McCarter spoke of after his retirement. One of the most heartbreaking and perplexing anomalies is the disembodied cry for help. The victim is clearly heard, yet they cannot be located. Mitchell Dale Stalling vanished while hiking in Mesa Verde in 2013. A hiker heard a weary male voice call, "I need some help." And another staffer confirmed they thought they heard a call the day before. Multiple people confirmed hearing a desperate voice in the same canyon. Yet the search teams, who were right there, could not close the distance. They couldn't find the source. Was the victim somehow hidden, or were they being pulled away from the rescue? It took 7 long years for his remains to be finally found. This exact scenario repeated itself with runner Philip Kasich in Pleasanton Ridge, California, in 2021. Philip vanished without a trace. And days later, multiple searchers heard a man screaming for help in a canyon. Experienced teams went directly to the spot where the cries were heard. And that's when the sound stopped. They found nothing. They could hear the victim. But the moment they got close, the connection was severed. We often assume the voice is the victim's final plea. But what if it's something else? Something mimicking a human voice to lure or confuse the search teams. It is a possibility we cannot ignore. Finally, sometimes the spirit of the missing seems to try to communicate its fate. Consider Sandra Hughes, who vanished in Sierra National Forest. A year later, a 3-year-old child, Caden, began pointing into a meadow, describing a dead woman in a black shirt and blue hair. The exact description of Sandra. The child insisted, "Mom, she's already dead, but she needs our help." His detailed knowledge of her description was so chilling that the sheriff's office felt they had to investigate. Was Sandra's ghost attempting to communicate with the only person pure enough, the only child, who could still perceive her? The evidence suggests a terrifying final attempt at closure. The missing 411 cases are defined by these clusters of high strangeness vanishing from plain sight. The failure of K9 units to find a scent. and victims being heard but remaining unlocatable. These cases challenge our established understanding of search and rescue protocol and, more disturbingly, the very nature of reality within these wildlands. The facts don't lie, but they don't give easy answers. What happened to Paul Fugate? Was Kenny Beach taken by a secret force or something ancient from the M Cave? And who were the silent people Linda Ortega saw in the freezing woods? I want to hear your thoughts on these cases. Do they point toward a distinct underlying phenomenon operating in our forests? Let me know in the comments below. If you value this type of honest, fact-based investigation into the truly unexplained, hit that like button and subscribe to Mystery Rift. Until next time, be safe. And remember to always pay attention to your surroundings. This is David Paulides, signing off.